which we do not currently have in our current building. Strollers. As an Orthodox synagogue, you are not allowed to drive on the Sabbath, so most of our members walk to synagogue on Saturdays. We will be adding a canopy outside the new building to be used for stroller parking on the west side in order to comply with fire codes within the building. Our parking lot. We have 37 parking spaces, and we are now able to add 20 more. As an Orthodox synagogue, the majority of our members walk on Saturday and holidays, and therefore the parking lot is closed on those days. Members can park their cars in the parking lot before the Sabbath or holidays begin and can only remove them after it ends.
Dr. Smilo, please let the board know whether the operations of the synagogue will change as a result of the expansion.
So the simple answer is no. We expect to operate the same, but just in a larger space. In terms of our sanctuary seating, it's relatively staying the same. The current seating allows for 334 people in the main sanctuary. We are only increasing to 351 seats. The reason we are not increasing this number by a lot is because on a weekly basis for our Saturday services, we are not filling the main sanctuary, and we are not campaigning for new members. So we see no need to increase the seating by much. And I just would like to stress that this building is being expanded in order to meet the current needs, like we said before, of our membership. The intention is not to use the expansion to increase the number of our members. We do not have a religious school, a nursery school, or an in-house caterer, and there are no plans to do this. During the week, our daily services are no more than 20 people, and that goes from Sunday to Friday mornings. During the day, there is only a secretary in the building during normal business hours and an occasional visitor. Events, bar and bat mitzvahs, baby namings, brisses, these are not regular occurrences, but they do happen throughout the month, and they will continue. The building has seldom been used as a wedding venue and does not compare to an actual venue such as Crystal Plaza in Livingston. In terms of special events like holidays on Hanukkah and Purim that happen in December and in March, these will continue, but they do not bring in more people than the sanctuary seats. And also, just a very important point I'd like to emphasize, there is never an instance where there are services and an event occurring at the same time.
Dr. Smilo, please tell the board whether you have commercial vehicles that are frequently coming to the synagogue property.
So the only commercial vehicles that come are either FedEx or UPS delivery during the week. We have no commercial vehicles that regularly frequent our building. We do have private garbage/recycling pickup once per week. We advise the company about abiding by the rules regarding when they are allowed to come for a pickup out of respect to our neighbors. If we need extra pickup, we just call for an additional pickup. When there is a special event in the synagogue, there may be a food truck, but our loading space is really it's more than adequate to have just one loading space in the new building.
Dr. Smilo, the new building has an open terrace, which the existing building does not. Please tell the board the purposes and how it will be used.
Okay. So this terrace is needed for a religious reason. We have a holiday, Sukkot, that will be coming up in October, where we are commanded by the Bible to erect a sukkah, which is a type of a hut, for a 7-day period which occurs during the fall. Out of respect for the neighbors, the terrace will have high walls for privacy reasons, as well as safety. Any lights on the terrace will be faced inwards, not outwards, and there will be no built-in speakers to reduce the noise.
Dr. Smilo, with regard to the neighbors, the applicant owns the house at 18 Pitt Road. Please tell the board how that property is used.
So that property is now used for our youth directors with a husband and wife and their family. The previous youth director/assistant rabbi were living there, and it was their private residence also.
Dr. Smilo, with regard to 18 Pitt Road, does the synagogue have any intention of tearing down the house to make a parking lot, or does it have any plans for there to be a driveway or for there to be a walking path through 18 Pitt Road to connect to the synagogue property that exists on Mountain Avenue?
No.
Dr. Smilo, what is the relationship between the applicant and the township?
The synagogue is an important part of the Springfield community. We are honored to be part of the Springfield community. We have good relationships with the township, police, fire, and first aid departments. The synagogue has been in the township over 50 years and is looking forward to many more years in this community.
Dr. Smilo, in conclusion to your testimony, would it be accurate to state that based upon your testimony, the existing building no longer meets the needs of the applicant, but the new building addition and parking spaces are what is required to adequately meet the applicant's needs as a house of worship, and the applicant has been an important part of the community for that period of over 50 years?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Smilo. I have nothing further for Dr. Smilo.
Thank you so much.
No, don't go anywhere.
Okay.
Because we're going to go through questions. I'm going to start with Mr. Huber and work our way down, and then we'll go from there. And then our engineer and planner will ask you questions. Got it.
If this passed, would you be willing also to put in that you will never knock down that house? The house that you're talking about where,
Well, let me interrupt. Let me interrupt. I know there's been discussion from the two attorneys working on a mechanism, we're going to call it, as outlined in our board engineer's letter, to figure out how to make sure that that will never be a parking lot going forward. Because we would not want a curb cut going out. We would never want someone driving from Mountain Avenue through the temple out to Pitt Road, which they've conceptually, I've been working through that process, so.
I would not, if it passed, I want something in the contract or, that it can never be knocked down to make a parking lot.
I can answer that. The board attorney and I have discussed this matter, and we are willing to put a deed restriction that indicates it will not be a parking lot.
Perfect.
I could also just say also that we stress that this is not a cut-through from Pitt to the shul. And so I'm just saying, our members do not cut through the yard or anything else like that.
If they ever wanted to knock the house down and put a playground or something along that line, that would be fine. But no parking lot, no cut-through, and I think we solved that problem. Perfect. Anything further, Mr. Huber? Mr. Leffler?
I have one quick question. Yeah, the terrace that you're talking about.
Yes.
Other than Sukkot, when and how often do you see that being used?
We have no real other way of using it. If there's bar bat mitzvahs, I mean, we're not anticipating it being a common place to be used. There will be a door to wall it off, so no kids, and to prevent from safety and everything else like that. But its main use is for our holiday of Sukkot. That's where we congregate for those 7 days, and it's not for the entire 7-day period. It will be for sporadically throughout the times where we have to be in that hut.
So, Dr. Smilo, it's an infrequent use, and it's seasonal, so that in and of itself makes it an infrequent use, correct?
That sounds good. Yes.
I do, I'll go to.
You indicated regarding the parking lot that obviously your congregants don't drive on the holidays, but they are permitted to drive there before the holidays, leave their cars there, and then retrieve their cars at the end of the holiday or Shabbat.
Mm-hmm.
How often does that happen?
That they,
That is done?
that's on every week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So every week,
Every week.
okay. And is your parking lot full every week?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Barnett?
No, I don't have any questions. Appreciate the thoroughness of your testimony.
Committeeman Kaiser?
Just following up on the terrace, what do you currently use now on your property during that holiday?
We build it now in the parking lot.
You build it in the park?
Yeah.
It looks like that the impervious coverage is going to be increasing, and I'm going to ask, is that because of the additional parking spaces? And if so, what are the purpose for the additional parking spaces?
Do you want to save that for the engineer?
Well, I guess I want to know the reason for the additional parking spaces.
Go ahead.
We have more space, and it's just, we're able to add more, and obviously, we have the members, but if we can get more parking spaces, we know, that's why we're just adding the 20
Well,
parking
Dr.
spaces. But the thing is that,
Dr. Smilo, it's, as of right now, that's a pre-existing non-conforming condition that we're under in the number of
yeah,
parking
we're
spaces,
under
correct?
anyway, so we were just, by
We're
making
trying to
it bigger-
improve the situation, and that would put 20 less cars on the street.
Yes, because if you go there on Saturday, people do park on the street all around.
So this.
Very few.
This will lessen the parking on the street by 20
People come
cars.
on a Friday afternoon and they see that the lot is full, they will drive back home and they will walk to shul. So that's kind of, that's how that is. No double parking or anything else like that.
And for those that don't know, shul is another name for the synagogue.
Sorry, yeah, synagogue, shul, house of worship.
Marissa, anything further?
No, I just thought my question was answered.
Mr. Cedarquist? So I just have a couple. One, you're obviously going to have a security plan. I would like that to be reviewed by the chief or his designee to make sure that, with whatever cameras are pointed whatever direction or so forth, that the chief has an opportunity to look at it and help.
Yes, of course.
And we have, just so you know, Chairman, we have no intention of violating anybody's privacy with cameras, but we cannot reveal the security plan in public.
Agree. I don't want to
And the
know.
cameras now are only focused on our property. They're not focused on any other outside property around the synagogue.
Perfect. I just would like that Chief Cook or his designee review it with you to make sure that that is the case. So I just want to confirm, so there's no planned additional membership, that it's just really the kids, that to try to put the kids away from the shul.
Correct.
You're adding only 17 seats in the shul, so
Yes, 17, yes.
Really?
334 to 351.
you can't really grow too much with 17 seats per se. And they're just adding classrooms, moving the kitchen. What else did you say? And the rabbis.
We're adding bathrooms. Also, yes, we're adding classrooms, the rabbi's office. Like I said, there is a nursing room. There's more storage. And the smaller sanctuary that's in our shul, we have a big one and a small one, that's also being moved, making larger also.
Okay, so
I would just like to make a comment about what Dr. Smiley said. He did refer to it as a classroom, but we do not have a school or anything. These are youth rooms for the kids on the
Yes.
Sabbath and holidays.
Youth rooms.
And no plan to have a school. The majority of the children go to yeshiva.
that's fine. So it's just, really, we're gaining 20 additional parking spots on site as well.
Correct.
Which will help exacerbate anyone parking off of Pitt or anyone parking on Mountain Avenue.
Yes.
I have nothing further from the board? So let's bring up your next witness, engineer, again from the public. Oh, wait, actually, I take that back. Mr. Disco and Mr. Mistretta, can you ask any questions? Sorry, I
I'm
apologize.
sorry, you could turn.
Sure, just, the board answered most of my, asked most of my questions, and most of my questions are for the other professionals. But one question I have is, can you describe the parking as it is today or currently when you have these special events, a bar mitzvah or any one of those type of special events?
Yes, again, we do fill up the parking lot, and if there is need, they do park on Mountain Avenue or Shumpike, or they will park on Pitt. And you're looking at no more of a 3 to 5 hour window when this might be happening for the brisses, and brisses are less than that, and the bar bat mitzvahs, but it depends how big these bar and bat mitzvahs are. So the parking lot might get full, it might not, so, but if there is overflow, they park on the street, or they will walk if they live on Pitt or others, spots.
And one more question, the events, the religious events that take place on the terrace, is there a certain time of year, or how often does that occur?
Once a
or
year in the fall,
Once a year in the fall?
for a 7-day period.
Okay,
We're
thank you.
not living there for a 7-day period, it's just,
Understood.
not that big, but.
So you're aware that we have a township ordinance at 11 o'clock?
Yes, of
That's our
course.
noise ordinance that we will comply with.
That's fine. Mr. Disco?
For your testimony, you mentioned about the garbage pickup and recycling pickup once a week.
Yes.
Is there a set day and set time range that happens in now?
Should be happening past 7 o'clock in the morning. I don't know the exact day.
We can check that for you.
Okay, is there any anticipation that the frequency will increase as a result of this application?
No, and like I said, if there is a bar bat mitzvah, or if we need like just an additional pickup, we just call. Otherwise, no, we don't anticipate that at all.
Okay, the proposed plan accounts for one loading area
Yes,
by the door. Is that sufficient for your operation?
100%.
Thank you.
Again, I want to reiterate, the garbage, again, to try to make sure you talk to the garbage company to see, you do have residents behind you, if there's
Yeah.
any way to, I know you can't control them. They come on a route, and they're going to come in and come out.
We do our best, and if there's a problem, we make sure to call the company. Like I said, we don't own them. We try our best to comply with our, we know we have neighbors. We don't want our neighbors to be angry at all.
Okay, thank you. But please be aware that all the witnesses that testify must be at every
Oh,
single.
we know, yes.
So that way, when the public gets their time to speak, they have an opportunity to cross-examine or ask whatever question.
We will comply.
Perfect.
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would like to call Danielle Lashgrenier of Dynamic Engineering Consultants. She is a licensed professional engineer, but I will let you do her credentials.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Smiley.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Could you please state your name for the record, spell your last name?
Sure. Danielle Lesgrenier, Lescrinier.
Ms. Lesgrenier.
Yes.
If you could, so you, counsel has already said, I'm going to do just a little bit of voir dire. Could you just identify what your current profession is?
Sure, yes. I am a professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, and my license is in good standing. I work for the firm Dynamic Engineering Consultants, for which I am a project manager. I have about 6 years' experience designing various commercial, residential, mixed-use projects throughout the state of New Jersey, and I have a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from the New Jersey Institute of Technology.
Okay, very good. And have you appeared before other planning boards in the state of New Jersey?
Yes, I have.
And have you been accepted as an expert in those planning boards? Any other land use or zoning board applications that you've appeared on as well?
Yes.
And that's only in the state of New Jersey, or are you also licensed anywhere else?
I'm only licensed in the state of New Jersey.
Okay.
But I have appeared before boards in New York State.
Thank you. Board will accept you as an expert.
Board have any concerns? Nope. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Lescrinier, if you would be kind enough to tell the board and explain to the board why we're doing this expansion from the engineering perspective and go through the site plan.
Sure. Well, yeah, from the engineering perspective, our client came to us with their need for the building expansion, and then from there, we took it away for the site design itself. And I'll get into details of that. First, I'd actually just like to orientate everybody who's here today with the existing conditions of the site. Unfortunately, my exhibit is very far away from me, but that is our first exhibit for this evening.
Is that the actual plans that they have, or do we need to mark
Yes,
this?
this sheet is entitled aerial map, and it is within the site plan set that was already
You don't have to
submitted.
mark it as an exhibit?
Yes, yeah. So, yep, like I just said, that's the aerial map exhibit, which shows a bird's eye view of the site and the surrounding area under existing conditions today. North is located towards the top right of the page, and the scale is 1 inch equals 100 feet. The subject property tonight that we're speaking about is lots 33, 34, 35, 36, and 39, all within block 1801. The lot area total is approximately 1.67 acres. The mailing address is 339 Mountain Avenue, that's for the synagogue itself. And the site is located within the S60 zone, which is a single-family zone, as Ms. Horelik already stated. The existing use is the place of worship, which is a permitted use in the zone, as well as single-family dwellings, which are also permitted uses. Those single-family dwellings are located on lots 33, 34, and 39, and the place of worship is located on lots 35 and 36. That same use takes up both of those lots today, which will come into play with our lot consolidation portion of the application. Under proposed conditions, those two uses are remaining the same, the place of worship and the single-family dwelling. However, under proposed conditions, only the single-family dwelling on Lot 39 will remain. And like was testified earlier, that is for the youth director's residence. The other two dwellings will be demolished under proposed conditions. In the surrounding area to the north, we have the Mountain Avenue and Shunpike Road intersection with the Springfield Veterans Memorial Park and other residential uses beyond. To the east, we have Shunpike Road and single-family residential uses. Thank you.
It's page 2 of the plan, though, just so you have it.
It's fine, turn it, and like in 2 minutes, we'll turn it back to the public, so that way they can see it. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No problem. To the east, we have Shunpike Road with single-family residential uses and the DU Spiritual Institute. To the south, we have more single-family dwellings, and to the west is Mountain Avenue with more single-family dwellings. The site is a corner lot on Mountain Avenue and Shunpike Road, which are county roads. There is a one-way entrance driveway in only from Mountain Avenue that exists today. And off of Shunpike Road, there is a full movement driveway, which is about 24.7 feet wide. 24 feet is required. There are also residential driveways servicing the two existing dwellings, which are towards the west of the congregation building. One of those services, it's a joint driveway that services both the adjacent property to the west, and it is bisected by the subject property's property line, and also services one of the buildings that will be demolished to the east of that. The other driveway, residential, more to the east, services the single-family dwelling solely that is being demolished. The existing synagogue building is approximately 13,600 square feet. It is a one-story masonry building, place of worship, as I already mentioned. There are 37 total existing parking spaces located to the east and to the south of the building. There's approximately 58% of impervious surface cover within the entire tract, which does exceed the requirement. I'll get into more of that later. Then there's the 2.5-story frame dwelling, like I mentioned, and the 2-story frame dwelling located on lots 34 and 33 respectively, and each of those homes each has a garage which is located in those rear yards. The existing single-family dwelling of 1,500 square feet, which is located on lot 39, that's going to remain, youth director's home, and there's also an existing playground located between the two dwellings and the synagogue building. Any questions on existing conditions? Great. So next I'd like to introduce my next exhibit.
Is that a page of the existing plan?
No, it is not. This
Okay,
is
so
a separate exhibit.
That needs to be marked.
Sure. Yes, this is entitled Site Plan Rendering, dated August 26th of 2024. This is essentially a colorized version of the site plan sheet that was within our submitted plan package. So for orientation purposes, again, north is oriented towards the top right of the page, same as all the plans within the plan set. Scale is 1 inch equals 20 feet. Again, same as all the other plan sheets. And so this rendering depicts both the existing and proposed addition and all the other proposed site plan improvements. In white is the existing synagogue building, and in that dark orange color is the proposed addition just to the south. The expansion is 2 stories, and it's approximately 7,500 square feet in footprint. In terms of driveway access, the locations of the driveways are very similar to existing conditions. The one off of Shunpike Road, which is full movement, is going to remain as is. There are no improvements to that driveway proposed. You can go both in and out of that driveway to access those parking spaces. Then we have a proposed in-only, ingress-only driveway off of Mountain Avenue, which is along the western property line. That driveway is in a similar location to the existing ingress-only driveway, but it is pushed a little bit further to the west because the existing driveway location would be right about where the addition is going to go. That one driveway that is being removed, that's roughly where the proposed parking lot is going to be in that dark gray shade. I'll get into that in a moment. But that shared driveway that was currently being used by both residential dwellings, the one which is to remain off-site to the west, and one of the ones that is being demolished on-site, that shared driveway is going to remain. We understand, obviously, that's another private owner, unrelated, and they need to be able to access the same way that they access today. So about half of their driveway is located off-site on their property, and half of that driveway is going to remain on the subject property under proposed conditions. And I will get into buffering in a second, but you will see there is a green strip just on the western property line, and that is basically going to act as a buffer between that existing driveway, even though it is still on the subject property, but it will be used by that other residence.
If one doesn't already exist, yes. And in addition to that, she's going to explain how we're not using it as a driveway.
Right, yes. That will not be used by the synagogue whatsoever. was, I guess, shared use for that dwelling that was there, but the dwelling is no longer there, so it serves no purpose under proposed conditions. We're not even proposing any access. Like I said, that green strip is going to be landscaped, so there would be no purpose for the use of the synagogue.
That's to the benefit of the neighbor.
Sure, yes. Now, in terms of parking, that gray hatched area that's kind of underneath where the buildings are, the darker gray color to the south and to the west of the proposed addition, that is new pavement parking area, and the lighter gray area to the east of the existing building, that is the existing parking today. It's come to our attention, since we've received some feedback from the professionals, that the parking lot is not in the best condition, so the applicant is amenable to repairing the parking lot and resurfacing it as a part of this work.
The applicant will repave the parking lot.
In terms of the parking requirements, under existing conditions, there are 334 seats within the synagogue. The parking requirements within the ordinance are based off of the number of seats. So the current requirement for what's built there today is 1 parking space per 3 seats, so that yields 112 spaces that are required. Like we've previously stated, there's 37 spaces existing, so that is an existing nonconformity. Under proposed conditions, there is a slight increase in seats, and the same ratio applies of 1 space per 3 seats, so that yields 117 spaces required. However, we're proposing to increase the number of parking by 20 spaces to 57 total physical spaces, which is still deficient in terms of the requirement in the ordinance. However, it is an increase of 20 spaces, and due to the increase in seats being so small and the increase of parking being larger, the ratio of seats to parking is actually being increased under proposed conditions. Of those 20 new spaces, 3 of them will be accessible, so they will be compliant with ADA requirements. Those are located, you can see those light blue stripes just to the left page side of the proposed addition. That's going to be the closest route to the entrance of the building or to the proposed addition. Also, we have 2 electric vehicle charging spaces similar in that location, and one of which will be ADA accessible to comply with the state requirements. Again, I'd like to reiterate, we are seeking a parking variance for those, for the number of parking spaces, in addition to a design waiver for a part of the configuration of the parking lot. So as I mentioned, the ingress-only driveway is going to be coming from Mountain Avenue, similar to existing conditions. So if you're coming in from that direction, you're going to be traveling to the east. You can either park in some of those spaces that are going to be located in the new parking area, or you can make your way down towards the bottom of the page and through the driveway that lets you access the eastern parking area. That's a very similar circulation pattern to what's there today. So if you don't park in one of those spaces more immediately, you make your way through and you'll pass by some angled parking spaces which are located along the southernmost property line.
So let's go near. Can you just tell them about the credit we get for the 2 EV charging stations?
Sure, yes. Based off state requirements, if you provide electric vehicle charging spaces or make-ready spaces, that allows you to basically double count those. So you can either take 2 away from the amount that you're required, or they count as 2 spaces. So technically, you can look at it as if we're providing 59 spaces, whereas only 57 physical spaces are being constructed. So the variance relief is slightly decreased because of that.
Thank you for explaining.
Of course, yeah. So as I mentioned, you'll reach those angled spaces which are located just below the proposed addition. The area behind those angled spaces, while they are angled, they're not quite 60 degrees, but they're also not exactly perpendicular. And we understand that those cannot be considered 60-degree angled parking spaces, so we are seeking a waiver for the width of the driveway that's behind them. What's required for 90 degrees, since I suppose that's what they're being considered, is 24 feet wide, whereas we're only proposing 19.1 feet wide. However, we do believe that it's still functional, it is still feasible for people to park there. We ran a passenger car in our truck turning software within AutoCAD, and we made sure that even in the most restricted space, somebody could adequately access that space and back up out of it. So,
What about a fire truck?
not a fire truck, a passenger car in the parking space.
What if a fire truck had to get through
A
there?
fire truck can circulate the site. Yeah. Yep, those are
With those
modeled-
cars parked there?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes, yep, and that's,
They will, that's part of it.
yes, yeah. And those truck turning movements are within the site plan set at the end in case you wanted to review that.
I would just add, Mr. Huber, that the fire department was at the TRC meeting and did not have an issue with that.
Okay, then in terms of loading, Mr. Smiley put on the record earlier that we do have one loading space provided, and he does believe that that is adequate to service the operations of the facility. However, only providing one loading space does force us to seek a variance for that item. 2 loading spaces are actually required based off of the proposed square footage of the building post-construction. So while 2 spaces would be required per the ordinance, we are only providing 1. It does meet the size requirements, but we do feel like the number of spaces is adequate for the frequency of use and the type of use that they have. We are also seeking a waiver for the maximum number of parking spaces in a continuous row. That maximum number is 14, and I'd like to point out that 15 continuous spaces do exist in the current parking lot that's located to the southeast of the existing building. We are restriping that area to allow for 1 more space because some of those spaces were oversized. So that was a good way to get another parking space to help decrease the variance a little bit, but not actually have to add additional impervious coverage. So while we would be forced to seek that design waiver for having 16 spaces in a row, it does make a better use of the pavement that's already there.
So if we didn't grant that, you would just have to put in like a cartway or something to put like trees in place.
Right, so we could put like an island somewhere to break them up, but that would lose a space.
So it's better, in your opinion, it's better to have the additional space given this parking variance?
Yes, exactly.
Can we look at whatever trees you would have put in that spot to move to somewhere else so that we equal it out?
Sure, that can be discussed, yeah.
Like, just take a note of that,
Yeah.
please. Thank you.
Okay, so the other facet of this application is the minor subdivision and lot consolidation. The subdivision includes the relocation of the Lot 39 rear lot line. Currently, it's on an angle adjacent to Lot 38, but under proposed conditions, that rear lot line is going to align with the Lot 38 rear property line. So they will have the same backyard line, whereas previously it angled out a little bit and their lot was a little bit larger. That results in a reduction of lot area by about 1,800 square feet for Lot 39. However, the lot area remains compliant at 0.2 acres, while 0.17 acres is the minimum allowed for the area. So we're not seeking any bulk relief as a result of that subdivision. That 1,800 square feet is going to get added to the congregation's lot area, and that lot area is going to be consolidated. It just makes sense at this point in time to consolidate those lots since they're all being used by the synagogue. So that's part of that consolidation. And we did consider the subdivision and the consolidation in the other bulk requirements, namely building coverage and impervious coverage. So let's start with building coverage. There's 25% maximum permitted. However, under existing conditions, looking at all the subject properties, 28.6 is currently existing, so that's an existing nonconformity. Under proposed conditions due to the building addition, but also taking into account the dwellings that are being demolished, there will be 38.8% proposed for building coverage, and that includes the lots combined. Under impervious coverage requirements, 36% is the maximum permitted. 58.1 is currently existing today, so again, an existing nonconformity, and we are proposing to increase that to 75.9%. That's an increase of about 9,000 square feet of impervious coverage under proposed conditions.
And Ms. Lescornaire, just let's reiterate through your testimony, the pre-existing non-conforming conditions that exist at 18 Pitt Road, which is the subject of the minor subdivision, and 339 Mountain Avenue are remaining unchanged, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Yep, there is no other alteration proposed to the Lot 39 other than the slight relocation of that rear property line. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And that brings us to site grading and stormwater management. So the site grading design was intended to maintain existing topography as much as possible. It's also intended to maintain existing drainage patterns as much as possible. Also, within the grading design, we took into account the ADA accessibility requirements. So, like I mentioned, we have those ADA parking spots located immediately adjacent to the proposed addition and provide an accessible route from those spaces to the building as required. In terms of stormwater management, First, I'd like to point out that our limit of disturbance is about 0.7 acres, which is less than 1 acre. We're proposing an additional about 9,000 square foot of impervious coverage, which is 0.22 acres, less than 0.25 acres. So the 1 acre and the 0.25 acres are important when we first start to begin looking at a stormwater management design, because that determines whether or not it's considered a minor or a major stormwater development per NJAC 7:8, which is the DEP's stormwater management rule. So because we are under those thresholds, this project does not actually trigger the major development requirements. For that reason, the project is not subject to the groundwater recharge, the water quality, or the runoff quantity reduction requirements. Now, that's not to say that we're not doing anything for stormwater management, because good engineering design, we don't want to basically generate more runoff than what is currently there existing. That would be negatively impacting the neighbors. So what we are doing is proposing an additional underground detention basin, which is going to be located under a portion of the new parking area to the south of the building addition. And that detention basin is designed to take the additional runoff, detain it, and release it at a slow, controlled rate. And what that does is actually decrease the amount of runoff that's leaving the site, even compared to existing conditions. So a natural concern is that we're increasing impervious coverage, and that increases the rate of runoff which leaves the site. However, due to this basin, we are not only meeting the existing runoff rates, but we are actually exceeding the requirement and decreasing them under proposed conditions.
Ms. Lescarnera, is it accurate to state that your testimony is indicating that there will be no additional stormwater that will flow off-site?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Is it your testimony that none of the stormwater will affect any of the neighbors with the additional runoff? I mean, I know there's a curb, obviously.
Right.
Can you testify to the fact that with those two southerly, I guess, properties that are in between the temple,
Yes.
the house, any of the runoff from that parking lot, is there any chance of going on the neighbors' properties?
So the way that we addressed that was currently today there is some runoff going in that direction. But what we're doing with the parking lot design is actually grading it towards the inside of the property and capturing it within that detention basin and discharging it to the underground system that's already within Shunpike Road. So they should be experiencing less runoff based off this design, because we were taking what was flowing overland, even some of which was flowing south, we're directing that towards the property, detaining it in the proposed basin, and sending it underground to the conveyance system within the roadway.
Can I interrupt you? Mike, would you agree with that?
Yes.
You agree? Okay, continue, I'm sorry.
Sure, no problem. In terms of utilities, obviously this is an existing synagogue which is currently being serviced by the various utility companies. Those same companies are planning to service, again, the proposed addition today. It's been brought up that we were requested sanitary sewer calculations, which we did provide to you today. We understand that you probably need some time to review them, but we're amenable to any conversation or discussion about that going forward. In terms of site lighting, there are 6 wall-mounted lights proposed at about 9.25 feet in height. The height is dictated solely by the canopy height, which is going to be proposed on the proposed addition. The canopies are shown in that lighter orange color on the west, south, and eastern sides of the proposed addition, for those who can see. So there will be building-mounted lights along those canopies. Then there will be 4 freestanding lights proposed throughout the parking lot area to illuminate the parking lot. Those are at a mounting height of 18 feet. That height is compliant with the ordinance standard. And the lights, as we previously said, are directed away from adjacent neighbors. We are also using cutoff shields. As we understand, some of the lights are located close to the adjacent property lines due to the fact that the parking lot is the perimeter of the site, but those lights do have cutoff shields to make sure that we cut off that light and the light is directed inward towards the property.
So, Ms. Lescarnera, you've done what you can do to diminish any glow or any lights directly going toward the neighbors, is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yes. And in terms of landscaping, we have a diverse planting list that is proposed and shown on our landscape plan that's within the site plan set. There's about 225 new plants proposed, 28 of which will be trees. And there are 2 primary areas where we really wanted to focus on buffering and landscaping. One of those is adjacent to lot 32, which is where that shared driveway is that I've been mentioning, where our lot line bisects that driveway. So I mentioned that green strip earlier, which is just plan right of that shared driveway. That's on average about 6 feet wide of landscaping that's going to be proposed there to enhance the buffer to that neighbor so that none of the cars that will be parked in that lot will be as visible as they would be without any sort of buffering.
Can you address some of the parking that's, so now, I guess, the house in between where the rabbi, the religious folks are living, there's now a parking lot in the back. Can you address how you buffer that? That's important for me to understand.
Sure.
Board.
Yes. Yeah, that was actually my next point.
Oh, see, I read your mind.
Yes, reading my mind. So there is a strip of landscaping proposed just along that property line as well. Those are mostly arborvitae trees. That was recommended by one of the town professionals, but we can tailor that mix to also have tailored junipers or skyrocket junipers, which can get up to about 30 feet tall. In addition to the additional plantings, we're also providing a 6-foot vinyl fence. In our plans currently, it's proposed as a white vinyl fence, but it was brought to our attention that the existing one is beige and white, and so there's no issue with making that match the existing fence if that's.
Two-tone fence.
What is the exact space from their property line to your parking lot, where you actually get pavement? How much buffer is there?
2 feet, which is the same, existing conditions, actually in the worst spot is 1.6 feet.
Yeah, so I don't know what the board is the mindset of, but I'd like to see, whether they have 56, 55 parking spots, I'd like to see one of those parking lots disappear and more of a buffer for that neighbor. That gives them the ability to have less parking close to their property line and more of a buffer with more trees to naturally grow into.
Yeah.
I don't know what the board feels like that.
Yeah.
What is your thoughts on?
Well, Ms. Luskin,
Parking spot,
let me
one.
ask a question. The professionals had raised the issue of compact parking spaces that would allow for a bigger buffer area
Yes.
without having to lose parking spaces.
Yes.
Is that something that's been considered? We know that we would need a waiver for that, but I thought it was a very good suggestion.
Yeah, so it has been discussed that we can provide what's called compact parking spaces, which are about 2 feet shorter than the traditional parking space. Our proposed parking spaces now are 18 feet long, but a typical compact space is about 16 feet long. Unfortunately, the Springfield ordinance does not have anything that allows for that written in the code, but if the board is willing to grant a waiver for that to allow for additional buffering, that's definitely something that
How
can be
much
done.
would they, Mike, how much would they gain by buffering with doing smaller spots in the middle area?
2 extra feet, you go from 2 to 4.
So to me, that doesn't, I would rather see losing a spot and giving 9 feet. So
Yes.
that's 11 feet with some trees planted there, like we talked about that island of relocating some trees, putting more trees there to naturally give a buffer. Whether you have 55, 56, to me, I would see that trying to buffer that property line would be more important.
But Ms. Luskin, let me ask this follow-up question. With the extra 2 feet that you would gain with the compact parking, you can plant a different type of species. Is that right? They can grow taller?
Yeah, there would be a little bit more room for a tree to grow, which could reach a higher growth height.
So I'll rephrase, Mr. Disco, would it be better for them to lose one spot and increase the parking variance to give more benefit to the neighbor to have more of a buffer, more trees, and less having a car closer to the property line?
Well, I think we're talking about the section there where the angled or slightly angled parking spaces are right behind the residential properties to the south. So you couldn't just lose.
No, I'm talking about
You're going to the far left,
far left. If you lost one there, you'd be able to
you
create
get
more.
9 extra feet above.
Get 9 extra feet. So my suggestion, and I don't know what the board, it seems like people are shaking their heads, that I would rather see additional buffer to that lot and block to be able to put more trees, more space. I was out there, I know the house is very far set back, and I think they do have a shed, but you want to be good neighbors. We talked through that, your board president testified to that. I'd like to see, to me, losing one spot, if not 2, but fine, at least 1, would give 9 plus 2, 11 feet of width.
Yes, yeah, I think the applicant would be amenable to something like that if that's the preference of the board. Obviously, when we were doing the site design, it's a give and take of how extreme the variance is versus allowing room for buffers, so.
I get it.
if
We're
that's
getting
preferred-
20 extra spots and no new members, so if
Yeah.
it's 19, it's 19. But when Mr. Disco gives the board some information, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
I would just make one comment to that. There had been quite a bit of discussion with regard to the banking of a spot or 2 spots. And there wasn't clarity as to which spot. So for purposes of this hearing, I mean, we don't want to lose a spot that's directly in front of our doors.
I get it, but I'm also want to be very mindful of neighbors that are potentially having a parking lot now, as opposed to before. So what lot and block is that, Mike?
So can we identify which spot?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can walk over there, but Mike, if you can identify, I think you,
Lot 32 is immediately to the west, to the left of the new.
so it would be the,
You're trying to protect Lot 40, the Glazner property.
yes, be the Glazner property, so then you would try to expand the
Okay.
width of this to give, take up one spot, you can give much more of a width to, I mean, I know they have to put up a fence, they have a tree that's pretty dying back there, but if you were able to create a bigger buffer, it would at least help some of their
Yeah,
voice.
yes.
But isn't that the spot that points to the garage?
Yeah, the head of the space does face a
So
shed or
you're-
garage.
It's already blocked.
Well, I'm just saying it allows to get more, more of a buffer there. So that way, cars are there, doors aren't slamming, it gives a little bit more buffer. I don't know what the board will think, but we'll wait, we'll table Mr. Disco. You can finish testimony, and we'll ask Mr. Disco his thoughts.
Sure, yeah, that's no problem. I didn't have too much else to say, actually, but other than there is landscaping throughout the site, including additional street trees that will be along Mountain Avenue, which will hopefully just create a better aesthetic environment for the area. And Ms. Horelik, I'm not sure if there's anything else I missed.
Just to sum up your testimony, from the engineering perspective, based on the type of building and the parking spaces that are being looked at, you have in fact covered stormwater, drainage, you've given sewage calculations to the engineer, you've dealt with the landscaping, and you've, I guess in your opinion, put together the best engineering plan that's in the best interest of the synagogue and the neighbors, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. I don't have anything further.
Okay, so before I open to the board, I want to, because it's engineering, let Mr. Disco go through.
Yeah.
Maybe you can answer the first question.
Oh, I'm sorry. And you did review Mr. Disco's and Mr. Mastretta's
Yes,
review letters, and you've hit all the points, is that correct?
I hope so. Unless I missed anything, let me know.
All right.
So let's start with Mr. Disco. If you can go through with, you know, you spent a lot of time on this application, but if you can incorporate one of the things I brought up. So go ahead.
All right, I'll just start with the landscaping since that's fresh. So you have 3 lots there. You got 4 lots. Lot 37 is at the corner of Pitt and Shunpike. So essentially, that's up against the existing parking lot, and there's essentially no change there for landscaping, okay? Next to that is Lot 38, the Praisner lot. That's where the beginning of the angled parking begins, and that angled parking continues across Lot 39, which is the Temple-owned property.
Did Praisner have parking in his backyard prior?
There was an asphalt paved area directly behind his lot. Yeah.
So that's
And
not changing, is that correct, Mike?
we're actually proposing 300 square feet of landscaping right behind his property line.
So the Lot 38 or the Praisner property is the one, there's an angled property line there, which is the current interconnection from the driveway off of Mountain Avenue to get access to the existing parking lot. So that area doesn't change too much. The area behind the remainder of the Praisner property, or Lot 38 and then also Lot 39, is currently where I'll call it the playground is now, that used to be a residential structure that was taken down. Okay, so there's minimal paving there now. There is a strip of paving there, but the whole new parking lot will be behind that. And then, going further west, Lot 40, the Glazner property, which is the one you were referencing, that has a existing buffer now of at least 6.1 feet, looks like it's probably about 7 feet. If we take away one parking spot there, you would get that up to 16 feet. Or you could take half of the parking spot and shift the parking perhaps towards the front, maybe you could pick up that one spot again. So there's certainly something that could be
There
done.
needs to be a continuation of at least the same buffer or more.
Yeah.
You can't shrink it.
The pinch point of the buffer is behind lots 39 and half partially of lot 38, where that's where the 2 feet is.
Yeah.
That's where you've got the angled parking, so you just can't take out one of those spaces to facilitate an entire shift or an increase of the buffer. You take out 1 or 2 and partially increase that. If you took out 1, for instance, you could have a substantial buffer, 18 feet more by 9, behind lot 38, the Praisner, but that wouldn't impact at all lot 39, the Temple-owned property. So you can, depending upon how you look at this, The other suggestion was maybe they could look at the 60-degree angle, maybe you pick up a half a foot or a foot in conjunction with the compact car, and maybe abandoning or banking one there. So there's things you can do. It's a question of what's more important, the one parking spot or more buffer?
I think
Maybe
more,
you want more buffer.
I think more buffer, but I think, we'll open up to the board when we get to it, but I would think the board would say, you figure out a great plan for us, and when we come back at the next meeting, let us know what's the best plan that you can come up with. But my thing would be, I'd rather give them less one parking or two, and have more of a buffer for the residents. That would be the right move. But my suggestion would be to review that between now and the next meeting and come up with a plan, but we'll open up to the board. But continue your testimony before we open up.
I'm gonna move off landscape, I'm just gonna go in order, okay? There was a lot of things here, so, just to confirm, this is comment number 2 now.
Sure.
I could not compare directly the lot 39 lot width existing to proposed, because the chart didn't have it.
Yes.
Just put on the record that the lot width will not decrease as a result of your, land distribution.
That's correct.
On comment number 8, will there be any gates connecting along anywhere on the property, the Temple property proper to any of the residential properties?
So there is currently a gate there today between lot 39,
Which is our, the
which is owned
congregation
by the
is your property.
congregation, yes, to the congregation property. And from what I understand, that is only utilized by the residents of that dwelling.
And that's to remain then?
Yes.
No, I think they agreed on the record that no one can use that.
Wait, what?
No one other than the resident that
Correct.
can use that. I think what we've done in the past with other applicants, you could probably send a letter out to all congregants reminding them that it's for this person's only to use. No one should be cutting through there.
And we represented at the TRC meeting that we would be more than happy to create a letter and put it on our website so that that won't happen.
That's fair.
But the gate remains.
And I wasn't suggesting that it's happening. I don't have any knowledge of whether it's happening. I just want to prevent it from happening, that it becomes more of a cut-through.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was there on, I guess it was Monday the 12th, when I went for a walk with my wife, and I didn't see it as a cut-through, because I wanted to see, I know that it was a holiday for that day. I didn't see it, but I want to make sure that they're aware that that cannot be a cut-through whatsoever. It would be unfair for the neighbor to the right or neighbor to the left to have people just walking through and walking through.
Item 12, I think Dr. Smilo answered, but one truck loading space seems to be sufficient. You
Yes.
agree with that?
Yes.
13 was really the aisle width issue adjacent to lot 38 there, where it necks down to 18, 19 feet. They're going to need a waiver for that unless those angled parking spaces change in some fashion,
Right.
or unless the sidewalk or the building corner changes. So you need a waiver.
Yeah, so at the next meeting, you guys, between now and the next meeting, the engineer and professionals can meet and figure out the best
Yeah,
option for that.
that sounds
Come back
great.
before us.
And comment 14 in the review really piggybacked that aisle width issue. That's the pinch point, I'm calling it, where you have a 2-foot buffer, the parking space, the insufficient aisle width to accommodate perpendicular parking, and then you have the sidewalk in the building corner. So it would be our goal to somehow increase buffer there and rectifying, if at all possible, the aisle width or parking space, okay? That, to me, seems the most logical place that it's weak at, and also where we could probably do something.
Sounds like you had a good start.
Our ordinance requires a 2-year replacement on the landscaping. It's currently shown as 1. I presume there'd be no issue in review.
We agree to that.
Yes.
It came up in the earlier testimony about the overhang over the stroller parking. The Springfield ordinance requires all roof overhangs to be included in building coverage. So for the applicant, I need confirmation whether those overhangs that in the light orange or beige are included in the building
Yes,
coverage?
they are.
Okay. So the 38.8% represents those 3 overhangs. That's the way our ordinance is written. Item 19 was the lighting and the shut-off. So our ordinance right now, geez, that's loud, requires a 10 PM shut-off or 1/2 hour after closing. This is geared for business, obviously, when you hear language like that. So I think it would be important to know when the light shut-off is going to happen, what the typical activity would cease that you would need to shut the lights off. So I don't know if there's been some thought to that.
Ms. Lescornier and I had looked into this, and she's got the information on the ordinance that we were looking at, because ours do go dusk to dawn, because there are services that happen very early in the morning and later in the evening. Early in the morning, it's still dark during certain times of the year, and for security reasons, because it's a synagogue, and because there are Torahs and expensive items in there, we don't want it to be a dark location.
But the lighting levels that we're showing, and that is going to be around the clock, is what I'm hearing, or no?
So in the ordinance, we noticed that it actually says you can have dimming devices that mitigate after 10 PM or after the half hour after it's closed. And it also excludes security lighting. So, but I actually didn't see a specific light level that dictates the amount of dimming or the security lighting. So if you have a recommendation, we're happy to specify that on our
So you're willing to dim, though, in order?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yes, we're just not willing to go dark.
understood. I'm confirming in number 20, are there any signs proposed, ground or wall? I didn't see any on the architectural plans, I didn't see on the site plan.
There's no ground signs proposed, and I would defer to the architect if there's anything that's going to be on the addition. But I don't imagine there would be anything substantial, at least to the rear, because that is not street facing.
There currently is, the one-way signage, that obviously the one that's up there now has been there forever, so that will be replaced, so you can actually read that it's one-way.
Besides traffic sign.
Yeah.
is what we're-
Right, besides traffic and directional signage, yes.
On the new addition, I would just note this, and this hasn't been decided yet, whether or not on the new addition itself, that there would be, the Congregation Israel, or the name of the building, whatever. That hasn't been decided yet, but if need be, and it doesn't comply with the ordinance, we will come back.
If you ever get to a motion, I think if there's going to be signs, just put in there a condition that they be compliant to the
Yep,
ordinance.
of course, they'd be compliant or they gotta come back.
Item 22, Dr. Smilo consented to the paving of the lot, to the existing lot to the, I'll call it southeast. Items 23 and 24 were additional sidewalk and curb repair requests because of the conditions out there. I don't know if there's, I didn't hear that testimony.
Yeah, it's been discussed.
The applicant is in agreement that we don't want a tripping hazard, and you are correct that you pointed out that some of it is not level. It will be addressed.
To the satisfaction of our board engineer.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I did receive the sanitary sewer flow calculations today. Whenever we have an increase, because we're Springfield, in 2019, we had 93 exceedances to RVSA. This year, as of June, we had 33 exceedances. We used to call them fines, and we have penalties and deeds there with that. So we have to pay money to RVSA. So whenever we have an applicant who increases sanitary sewer, we look for mitigation. Based upon the calculations I saw, which were, I don't want to say negligible, but minor, and based upon the normal mitigation techniques,
Isn't there a connection fee?
there's a simple, we can have that condition and it won't even cost very much.
Okay, so they meet whatever the condition of Rahway Valley Sewerage Authority is.
Is there any anticipated electrical transformer? It's a pet peeve of mine, I brought it up.
Yes. No, there is not one going to be located on the ground.
Any generator?
However, I would just add that if it turns out that that becomes a requirement, we have room in the basement so that it is not visible to the public.
Will there be any branding on the EV charging stations?
No.
So there's a generator, I think they testified.
Be on the roof.
On the roof, but we would have to work through.
Shielded.
I know, but there would have to be a cycle during normal hours, not at nighttime, to be run. I think that the ordinance says
Yeah,
that.
that will comply.
With the ordinance.
They do have truck turning plans in the plan set that you have for the Springfield fire.
Can you make sure fire sends us a letter, or you talk to them that they feel like it's adequate?
We will do that. Could you just offer testimony on item 37? Traffic engineer should offer testimony on site visibility from the existing proposed driveway along Shunpike Road.
We do have a traffic engineer
Okay,
here that's
that'll-
after Ms. Lister.
That's fine. And I did have multiple conversations with Dynamic Engineering. Grace?
Yes, she's here.
Grace is here. Where
Yeah.
are you? There's, hi, Grace. And so, some of the questions I had raised in my stormwater management have been muted to the sense that they provided the information that I didn't see in their extensive report, and I'm very comfortable with it. So on the record, I'm saying that they have tables in their stormwater management report that document that not only are they doing stormwater management activities, even though it's not a major development per NJDEP, but they are actually reducing discharges on-site by various levels, anywhere from 20 to 37% over what's the existing condition, okay? So that's something that's very important for the board, because again, just last Sunday night, we had an extensive event that caused flooding throughout a lot of the township. So if everybody reduced their discharges by 20 to 37%, we would never have a problem. But it's very difficult when you ask every single person in the town to reduce by that amount.
Is
So
it
they
your,
are doing it.
not that we don't believe her, but is it your testimony that none of the runoff will affect the neighbors?
What I can say is that, as was presented by Miss Jessica, Danielle, sorry. I was close. There was an A in it somewhere. There's curbing on the site, and then the low points, or where the drainage collection facilities are in the center of the parking lot. So it's not directing the water to the edge of the parking lot where it could jump the curb. It's actually directing it away from the property line to the center. So it's a much, if you're going to design something to alleviate a neighbor potential, this is what they've done, so. I think I'm going to shut up and let Michael Mistretta talk.
Mr. Mistretta, I know that you did a site plan inspection, you were out there. If you could talk a little bit about that, because that would answer some of the questions.
Sure, and I thank them for that inspection, because it was very helpful for me to walk the site, understand how it operated, and the parking, the movements, and the need for the expansion once you go through the building. It was a very helpful site inspection for me, both interior and exterior. I don't want to I want to keep the testimony going, but I just want to touch upon a couple of items. I'm speaking to my report dated August 23rd, 2024. I don't want to touch on anything that Mike Disco's already mentioned. He's mentioned a lot of the highlights of my letter, and I want to stay in my lane and let Mike handle the engineering. I just want to reinforce the fact that, and I've had the same conversation with Dynamic Engineering, that there are, in my opinion, I think there's some very strong opportunities to further reduce the impervious coverage on the property and increase the amount of landscaping and buffering between this existing structure as it's consolidated. And structure, I mean the entire property and the surrounding properties, without reducing or removing any parking spaces, with the exception that was discussed tonight. So
It sounds like you guys can meet and discuss this. in
yes, so I
advance.
think there's some really solid areas. I'm not going to go too much further than that. It's just that I'm also looking at, it's not just the landscaping and the buffer, it's also how do we get the impervious coverage down a little bit? And I'm not taking away any parking spaces. So there are opportunities, in my opinion. I've had that conversation with the professionals at Dynamic. One quick question. Page 10 of 12 of my letter, item number 3 under site plan review comments. Can you provide some testimony on either the existing or proposed 10-foot by 20-foot wide trash enclosure? What it looks like, what type of fencing, will it have a cover? Is it a chain link fence that encloses it? And if so, I think my recommendation is that a more decorative fence is used to enclose that structure. And I even mentioned, is there an opportunity to put something on top of it? I'm not talking a large structure, but again, to keep all of the trash enclosed with a better looking structure than a chain link fence.
Right. To answer your question, I think on the plans currently, I think it shows a chain link fence, but I don't think it would be an issue to provide something more decorative than that.
Well, I do believe that the current trash is enclosed with fencing, not chain link, at the current existing synagogue. So we would certainly, use a fence that would, be similar to that of the fence that's the border for the properties, so that you don't see the garbage. I don't know about a cover on it because of the way the hauler has to come in and lift up and over. But we certainly don't keep trash outside of the enclosure, and we certainly would represent that that would be the case here as well.
Okay, so you will improve the fence, the decorative nature of the fence?
Yes.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Okay. Very quickly, again, Mike touched on most of these items. I'm now on page 11 of 12. We've talked a lot about the landscaping. I'm not going to reiterate that. It's just that it's a big concern of mine, and I think there's a lot of opportunities. Are you the professional that we should ask a question regarding the lighting on the terrace, or should I wait for the architect?
The architect would have further detail for the lighting on the terrace. I am aware that if there is any light, it is pointed inward and not outward, and it does have a wall that does screen any activity on the terrace.
I'll hold off for the architect. We'll ask those same questions. And just to reinforce what Mike had mentioned, Mr. Disco, under lighting, the light, while the lighting, those, was it 4 or 5, meet the ordinance requirement of 18 feet, the fact that we're putting them very, very close to these residential properties, there's opportunities, I think, if you added one more light instead of trying to cover the area with one light post, if you had 2 at a shorter level, it might create a less of an impact on, with the house side shields, with the downlight, downward direction of the fixtures, that we could even further protect those residential property owners. And I'd also like to hear more, it doesn't have to be tonight, but when dusk to dawn, it's dimmed at night, the lights, to what level? I think that should be established.
Yeah, sure. We can talk about the light levels with Mr. Disco, and if the two of you have any preference for the dimming levels, we can certainly look to accommodate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Okay, let me open up to the board for a couple questions, and then we'll figure out what we're doing next. Mr. Cedarquist? Any questions? Richard? You? Yeah? No? Marissa? Okay, sure. Committee and Alex?
Quickly, and then I'll reserve time for later, but the EV charging station.
Alex, hit the button.
The EV's charging station, I stepped out for a minute. Are they going to be, I don't know if the right term is closed circuit, open circuit, are they going to be open to the public? Or like would anybody driving around the thing, I plug in my app, I see a Charge America station, I'm assuming that's what it would probably be, the network. Do I pull into your lot, or no? Would it be just for your members of the synagogue?
It's a private parking lot for the synagogue. It's not meant to be open, but,
Okay, Walmart has a private parking lot, but it pops up on my app and I pull in. I think it's a legitimate question. Do we have an answer?
No, I appreciate the question. I honestly don't know
Yeah,
the answer
so
right now.
maybe we get that answer.
I mean, because it's a synagogue and because we have our own security concerns, I mean, we weren't looking that this was gonna be an open charging station for anybody that's driving down the street.
You might not be looking at that, but that's why I'm raising it, because I'm pretty sure it's on a network, and if you don't want people pulling in there, I don't know if there, and I'm telling you, I don't know if there is an option to take it off the network. I don't know if there is a plan, but I would, as a synagogue, as a security concern, that might be something that you guys want to look at and then come back to us.
You want to probably make sure it's not on there, I would think. So that way you avoid that. So let's look into that for the next, when you come back.
Yeah, no, it's a great
Add it to
question.
the
We
list
can
of
look into
things,
that.
but good question, Alan.
Thank you.
Mr. Barnett?
My biggest issue was the stormwater drainage, but you addressed that. Are there drawings of that in the exhibits?
Yes, yeah.
And there's a,
You're gonna read it.
I don't have this, you don't have to present it, but I'll take a look. Okay.
this was given to the professionals, is a full book having to do with the stormwater.
That's part of the,
It was part of our submission.
Yeah, so that was my biggest issue, a matter near and dear to my heart with what my neighbors have done to their property. Any other security measures in terms of physical security preventing people from getting into the parking lots when they're not supposed to, or being able to drive a vehicle up onto a property where they're not supposed to?
There are ballards there,
There are removable bollards, yes.
so that the fire department can get in if they need to, but they come up and down. There's a rock collection that, they're big boulders that try to prevent anybody from storming the synagogue. And then when it's ultimately built, those protections will, be in place.
Sorry to have to ask that question. in
No, it's today's society and environment.
But any of your security plan will be subject to Chief Cook?
Yes, yes,
Or his designee?
yes.
Are the bollards gonna be up routinely, or?
The way they're used now is that they are, for example, when the parking lot is closed, they're up. Sabbath, holidays, they're up. During the week, and my, representative can testify if I'm not correct on this, but they tend to be down when just the secretary's in the office or somebody may be dropping something off along those lines. And for the daily services, they're down so that the people can drive into the parking lot. Obviously, if there was an event, they would be down.
I just have a couple of questions just about the lighting. I just want to go over that a little bit. How tall are the poles that are adjacent to the property where the residents are?
Sure, they're currently proposed as 18 feet solely because that's what's stipulated in the ordinance, but we are certainly open to lowering them and to taking another look at what that would do to the lighting design. Like the planner had mentioned, that might mean that we need an additional fixture in order to make up the required minimum light levels. But I don't think, the applicant does not have an issue with looking into that to better the situation.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And how tall is the fence back there?
6 feet.
It's in accordance with the ordinance.
Okay.
Is it 6 feet from grade, but when you have the parking lot a little bit lower,
It acts as if it is taller, yes, yeah,
Yeah, because it's above the curb.
right.
perfect. Mr. Huber?
If I misheard you, in other words, at night you're gonna dim it, you're not turning them off?
No, and that's for security reasons.
And they're not off now.
If you have paper right there, I think that they should, if your service gets over 9 o'clock, whatever it is, an hour after that, they should be dimmed and then they should go off, I feel.
Why don't we, let's leave that for Chief Cook to give us some information. And
What are they currently, what currently goes on?
Dusk to dawn,
Dusk to dawn?
yes.
Let's let,
And is there any dimming features currently?
I don't know the details, but I've not heard anything from surrounding neighbors over all these 50
Full lighting,
years that
dusk
that's been
to
an
dawn.
issue.
All right, full lighting from dusk.
let's, they're gonna meet with Chief Cook prior to the next meeting, let's, other things, because if he says it, I think then the board would be okay. If he doesn't, then we'll deal with it. That's okay with you.
And I really think that George does go on
Public network,
I'm not an expert at all, but I would assume if you're thinking in trying to get credit for those spaces, I'm assuming that it has to be public, but I'm not 100%
Yeah, we
sure.
can
So that's
look-
something
You should check into it.
look into.
Sure.
Aaron?
There's currently not a light at all.
Can you guys turn your mic on? Aaron, can you turn your mic on?
Okay, so what you're saying is that there aren't lights there at night now?
no, we are saying there are, dusk to dawn.
There are
Dusk to
two
dawn.
existing light poles towards the bottom of the page in that existing parking lot against the adjacent property line.
Currently?
Currently,
Yes.
and we are proposing to put the same number in the same location.
So there's really not gonna be much of a change as
Correct,
far as lighting goes?
yes,
And there's been no issues up to date?
no.
Okay, I don't have anything else.
You're further proposing to have a dimming option, correct?
Say that again?
You're proposing to also have a dimming option?
If that's what the engineer wants, then we will comply.
I'd like to hold that and have the police review it and see what it is from a security standpoint. And
It may not be necessary.
that's right.
Right.
Let's see what Chief Cook has to say. We also want to hear from the residents, but I want to hear from the police first on what the appropriate security plan is for a synagogue or any place of worship, whatever that matters. So I would like to just table that and hopefully ask Chief Cook to elaborate on that when you have a meeting with him. Hopefully you can meet with him by our next meeting.
We will.
Can I just ask,
question about the trees. Is there any, I know that there's, in the plan, there's proposed demolition and removal of trees. Is there any way to modify so you don't have to take those trees down?
So I believe the majority of the trees that are being removed are unfortunately where the proposed improvements are located,
There's no
so,
way.
No way?
yeah, yeah.
We're doing additional plantings, and I know there's a reimbursement in the event that we can't plant any more trees.
Right. We're not proposing to take down any of the trees that are near the intersection corner. All those are to remain out of the limit of disturbance, but unfortunately, some of the ones that are located right where the
Building's
parking lot
got-
would be,
or the
or the
parking lot.
building, yeah.
Maybe Mike can review that with you, so when you go back to the environmental commission, you can be comfortable that we did what we could do. And if they can't plant as many trees on site that they need to, they can go the route of the tree replacement fund. that the
Yes.
township has. Anything further? Okay, so seeing nothing further, I know it's 8:15, do you think you can get your
Traffic engineer,
10,
I
15
think we
minutes?
could get that one done.
Let's try that. So, thank you for testifying.
Thank
Just
you
know
so
that
much.
you have to come back on September 12th. No ifs, ands, or buts. Let's do the traffic. I want Mike to, comment a little bit on it as well. So, let's go. Go ahead, he'll affirm you.
I would like Connor Hughes from Dynamic Engineering Consultants, the traffic engineer, if you could go ahead and do.
Mr. Hughes, if you raise your right hand, you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give. You swear affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do.
Could you state your name again, I know for the record, and spell your last name?
Certainly. My name is Connor Hughes. Last name is spelled Hughes.
Okay, Mr. Hughes, could you represent and identify for the board your current profession?
Certainly. I'm a project manager at Dynamic Traffic, partnered with Dynamic Engineering. Address is 110 Main Street, 245 Main Street, Chester, New Jersey. I'm a professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. License is in current good standing. I've been practicing for about 7 years, in which time I've performed hundreds of different traffic impact studies for various commercial, residential, industrial types uses, house of worships. I've performed testimony in front of various other boards, over 30 boards throughout the state, where I've been accepted as an expert witness in traffic engineering.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Does the board have any questions?
Nope. We accept your qualifications.
Mr. Hughes,
Thank you.
before you testify, I just want to point out that there was a traffic impact study. We actually did two, because the first one expired by the time we got to the board. So this one is dated August 8th of 2024, and it was submitted to the professionals.
You review that?
Yes,
Do you agree with the findings?
yes.
Okay, so
Thank you.
Mr. Hughes, if you
Certainly.
could summarize our traffic impact situation.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
So as mentioned, we did perform a traffic impact study dated August 8th, 2024. The first part of that is establishing our existing conditions. So we went out and did manual traffic counts at the intersection adjacent to the site at Mountain Avenue and Shunpike Road. We also counted the existing site driveways along with the opposite road of Q Drive, opposite the site. So we did, again, manual turning movement counts at those intersections. We conducted those counts during the typical service times associated with the synagogue schedule. Particularly on Wednesday, May 8th, 2024, we conducted those counts from 6 in the morning to 9 in the morning. And then on Friday, May 10th, 2024, we counted from 6 o'clock to 8:15 at night. So again, those times being selected because they correspond with the typical service schedule associated with the use. Once we have those counts established, what we look at is the highest single hour of traffic volumes out of those two periods. That gives us what we call our peak hour. So we looked at the peak hour for both of those time periods, weekday AM, weekday evening, and then we have to project into the future to establish our future operating conditions. The first part of that is looking at background growth. We looked at the New Jersey DOT background growth rates. They determine those based on the roadway classifications area that you're in. That produces a rate of 2.25%. We grew that for 2 years, as is typical for a traffic impact study when projecting your future conditions. The next step on that is projecting your trip generation associated with the use. Now, this is a bit of a unique situation since, as mentioned multiple times, the congregation is not anticipated to expand with the physical building addition or the additional parking.
the size of the congregation will remain effectively the same. So in that sense, there is not going to be any additional trip generation from this project, and as well as the parking demand will effectively stay the same as well. So essentially, the trip generation that's being, that's out there today will also be the case once these additions are constructed. However, just to provide a conservative analysis and to give some sense of what the conditions look like, we took the existing counts at our driveways, came up with a trip generation rate based on the size of the building currently, and prorated that to the size of the building with the addition to come up with a future trip generation for the site. Again, just as a conservative measure and to have some sort of analysis in that build condition. And just to go over the numbers real quick, currently we counted a total of 11 trips in the morning. That's 1 inbound and 10 outbound. In the evening period, we counted 25 inbound and 2 outbound for a total of 27 trips. When we add those with the addition, with the rate that we counted, that becomes 22 trips in the morning and 53 in the afternoon, which is what we analyze as our build conditions, again, as a conservative measure. And what those results showed is that effectively the intersection adjacent as well as the driveways operate at the same level with or without that added site traffic. So in realistic terms, again, it's effectively going to operate the same as it is today, with the exception of any background growth that happens in the area, additional projects, things of that nature. But even the conservative measure of adding that site traffic, essentially doubling what's out there today, we still do not see a appreciable difference in those results. And just real quick on the site access, as mentioned, along Mountain Avenue, we're proposing to keep the configuration the same, ingress only at Mountain Avenue, full movement on Shunpike. But that Mountain Avenue driveway, we're proposing to move that further south, almost to essentially as far south as we can, farthest away from that signalized intersection. And also it'll be further offset from Q Drive. Currently it's about 30 feet offset from Q Drive. We're now increasing that to about 65, so we're essentially doubling that distance. So that'll provide for better operations, not only for the site, but also for vehicles traveling along Q Drive, exiting out to Mountain Avenue. There's a little bit of a less of a conflict situation there. So I just wanted to point that out. And then the site distance along the Shunpike Road driveway, that does meet Union County standards. It's a Union County roadway based on the speed limit of 30 miles an hour. This requires a 200-foot site distance in either direction, which we do meet. So there was no issues with the site distance or visibility coming out of that driveway.
Coming out of Q, you would have no making a right or left, no site plan distance, no.
Out of onto Mountain Avenue?
Yes.
Yeah.
From both
that's correct.
conflicting with Q, you wouldn't have any
Right.
issue.
Correct. Yeah, because the Mountain Avenue driveway is only ingress, so there wouldn't be any issue with that, with people coming out. So I think that pretty much covers everything from a traffic perspective. We talked about the parking situation, how with the variance, we're improving the variance condition. The additional parking spaces aren't intended to accommodate additional congregants. It's more to better accommodate the existing population. The parking ratio is being increased, so we do feel comfortable that with that aspect, as well as the street parking that's available on the surrounding roadways, which again the impact on those will be lessened now with the additional parking being provided, that the additional parking will allow this to operate even more efficiently, even during those special occasion types of events. So I'll wrap it up with that, and if there's
Perfect.
anything else. Or any
Mr. Hughes, just one thing. You had mentioned that it was unique, that likely the membership is not increasing.
Yes.
Isn't it also unique that this is an Orthodox synagogue where the parking lot is closed
Yes.
on Sabbath and holidays? So doesn't that affect the traffic situation?
Yes, absolutely. With some other houses of worship, you might have events where you have a mass influx of vehicles. So it is unique in that sense as well, how during some of those celebrations, the parking lot is physically closed, not to allow vehicles to enter and promote the walking to the site instead.
So even if they have 17 more seats and had 17 more members, they're accounting for on-site with.
Right,
17
essentially, yeah, if that were to be the case,
'Cause they-
essentially it would be a wash as to how it operates.
Okay. Mr. Disco, do you agree with everything?
Yes, and again, even with the analysis of the increased trip generation,
Yeah.
the intersections still function at an adequate level. Now, anybody who's driven Mountain Avenue Friday night trying to get home 5:30, yeah, it's not great, but what they're adding, or what they will add, or potentially add, is not gonna have a negative, significant, certainly, negative impact on the intersection performance. You get into the level of services, A through F, we don't wanna bore the board. If you're an F, that's a failure, just like in school. We don't have that condition here, so they're all passed.
Only when David went to school.
Yes, that's correct.
Do you have anything to add?
No comments on traffic.
Okay. Do you have anything further with witness?
Not on
Let me open it up
traffic
to the board.
unless the board has it.
Let me open it to the board.
I
Mr.
need to
Huber?
leave.
You need to leave?
I have an emergency that I have to attend to.
Okay, so that's fine. You'll just have to read the minutes for the time. So let the record reflect that, that Aaron is leaving at 8:24, so he'll have to read the minutes from 8:24 to the rest of this application.
I hope everything's okay.
Go ahead, Aaron.
The 2 days you did it, was it Wednesday and a Friday?
Yes, that's correct. Wednesday morning, Friday evening, again, to coincide with the schedule of the.
And I'm not saying, I mean, I know Saturday a lot of them drive and park on the street. So I think Saturday is the busiest time in the synagogue, I think. You know, and I don't know much about it, so don't kill me.
I'm not gonna, what I'm gonna comment is that, actually, I walk every Saturday to and from synagogue, and I do not see a lot of cars on Mountain Avenue. But I will say that the reason why we had them do the study when they did the study is for the very reason that on Saturday morning, nobody's coming in and out of the parking lot at all, period, not allowed. And with regard to the times we had them do it, we had them do it on a Friday night because that would be when you would get the most members who would come and leave their car in the parking lot. And the reason we did the early morning is because that's when we have early morning services, when you would have the most people that attend early morning services.
The dates, you mean? Yeah, it was, hold on. Wednesday, May 8th, again, 6 to 9 in the morning, and then Friday, May 10th, 6 to 8:15.
I would also just like to add that in Mr. Disco's review report, that he did a comparison or actually did a Google Earth to see the parking that went on over time. And the most he found in the parking lot itself was 35, but then mostly the parking lot's empty. So if the parking lot's mostly empty, there aren't cars going back and forth in and out. But Mr. Disco, that's your report, so you may speak to it.
It is. So, yeah, from 1985 forward, we can use Google Earth to look at the site. Now, it's random, so we have various days, and you see, the number of vehicles in the parking lot are 1, 0, 1, 35, 0, 23 plus, 1, 1, 0, 24, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, 5, 1, 4, 0, 7, 7 plus, 2, 1. So, a Friday night, I don't know if it's night, Friday, April 29th, 2022 was when we had the 35 vehicles. Actually, after I did this, I went back and looked. There was only one car on Pit Road, and none on Mountain. So there was no off-site parking on the street coincident with that day. September 6, 2021 was a Monday, 23-plus vehicles, tree covered, prevented me from, getting that exact. And August 16, 2020 is Sunday, there was 24 vehicles. Other than that, all the days going back to 1985 show nothing more than that.
I would
Again,
also like
it's
to-
random, but,
I would also like to add that you don't know whether the cars the one car that's on Pitt or the few cars that are on Mountain have anything to do with our synagogue.
We get it, but I think we can all say that there is parking off-site.
And it's allowable.
And it's allowable, and same thing on Mountain, it's allowable, but I think what your traffic expert said, which I took from and Mike reiterated, is even if you maxed out and had 17 new members, because there's 17 more seats for them to go to, you're not doing anything different than what you currently have.
Yep,
Correct.
correct.
He's basically
Correct.
saying. Julie, anything? Sharon?
Nope.
David?
To me, parking is a non-issue.
Yeah, and just to drive home, the
Drive home?
No pun intended,
Can you
right?
turn your mic on, Committeeman?
Just to drive home the point, the off-site parking is for events, right? But your congregants are walking during service hours, so it would be during bar mitzvahs and naming ceremonies would be, hey, when a ceremony happens, right, there's probably a lot of family members and friends that gather, so unfortunately that happens, just like any other house of worship during such events that they increase. So it's not like people are driving there before the Sabbath, leaving their car overnight on a street, and then picking it up the next
Right,
day.
which is not allowed anybody by ordinance in Springfield.
Yeah, so,
That's no different than somebody in a single-family house having a party.
no, exactly.
Marissa, none? Richard? Okay, so seeing none, you've gotten through 3 of your witnesses. At this point, I'm going to ask to end the application for tonight, carry this to September 12th, and I think from, what, is that your, and I would like.
That's fine.
A letter of consent that,
You need a,
or you can consent on the record, you're giving
I-
days additional, whatever.
I consent to the carry to September 12th with no further notice.
Yeah, of course, of course. So at that point, you're going to have your planner and your architect in whatever order that.
Architect, then planner.
And also, between now and then, your engineers and planners are going to meet with ours to figure out some of the open issues that the board's raised, so that way when you come back, those issues are resolved.
Correct.
And you'll have all 5 of your witnesses present.
Everybody will come back.
Okay, perfect. So at this time, I'm going to carry this application, Congregation Israel of Springfield, 9-2024 is being carried with no further notice to September 12th in this very room. For the public's record, you guys can come, everyone can come at 6:30, but we will have an application, Jersey Mike's, at 6:30 that will go before. So I'm not saying everyone can come at 6:30, but just to be aware that Jersey Mike's was supposed to be on tonight, and we moved them to next meeting. So they will go first. And
Mr. Chairman, I also represent another application that you were going to put on the 12th. Is that being moved?
yes, it's going to have to be.
So then I don't do notice at this point?
Yes, don't do notice. We'll have to figure out another date. So at this point, this application is carried. The next meeting, they're going to have 2 witnesses. If they complete their 2 witnesses and resolve everything, at that point in time, we will open it up to the public to ask questions. Every member of the public is able to speak. Every member of the public is able to question every one of their, 5 witnesses. And so keep your questions written down, so that way you're ready to ask them at that time. So at this point, I'm going to open this meeting up to the public for any other thing other than this application before us. Any members want to speak, any members of the public want to speak on anything else besides this application, because we're not talking about it right now. And September 12th is a Thursday. Yes, September 12th is a Thursday, in this very.
6:30 PM.
6:30 PM in this very room. So seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn? So moved. All in favor? Aye. Okay,
Thank
thank
you,
you,
Board.
everyone.